They called me a gold digger. His daughter actually said it to my face at the rehearsal dinner. What she didn't know was that the struggling art gallery her father was so proud of owning, I'd been anonymously funding it for the past 8 months through a numbered company. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Beatrice, and I'm 68 years old. I remarried last year to a man named Colin, who is 71. When I met Colin at a charity auction in Calgary, I was immediately drawn to his kindness, his laugh, the way he talked about art with genuine passion, despite clearly not understanding market values. He told me he owned a small contemporary art gallery in the Beltline district. He told me about his daughter, Vanessa, who was 42 and worked in finance in Toronto. He told me he'd been widowed for 6 years and was lonely. What I didn't tell him was that I owned 17 commercial properties across Alberta and British Columbia with a portfolio value of approximately $21 million. I didn't tell him that I'd built this empire starting from a single duplex I'd bought with my late husband, Marcus, back in 1983. I didn't tell him that after Marcus died of a heart attack in 2018, I'd thrown myself into property acquisition with an intensity that surprised even my own daughter. I met Colin in October of 2023. I was 67 then, wearing a simple navy dress I'd bought at Holt Renfrew but could have easily come from Hudson's Bay. I bid on a small sculpture, something I genuinely liked, not anything flashy. Colin bid against me, smiling, and when I won, he came over to congratulate me. We talked for 40 minutes. He asked what I did for work. I said I was retired, which was true. I said I'd worked in property management, which was also true, just incomplete. That first month, we went for coffee 3 times, then dinner, then walks along the Bow River. Colin talked about struggling to keep the gallery afloat, how the art market had changed, how online sales were killing small galleries. He never asked me for money, never hinted. He just shared his life, his worries, the way you do when you're building trust with someone. I visited his gallery in early November. It was beautiful, thoughtfully curated, but clearly not profitable. The location was good, but the rent was killing him. I knew because I knew Calgary's commercial real estate market the way some people know their own heartbeat. After that visit, I made some calls. Through one of my holding companies, 2487392 Alberta Limited, I contacted his landlord. I offered to buy the building. I did buy the building. Then I reduced Colin's rent by 30% and told the property manager to say the new owner wanted to support local arts. Colin was thrilled. He told me about it on our next date, how lucky he was, how this might save the gallery. I smiled and squeezed his hand. By December, we were serious. By February of 2024, Colin proposed. We were sitting in his small house in Altadore, a modest 1960s bungalow he'd bought decades ago, and he pulled out his grandmother's ring. He said he didn't want to spend whatever years he had left alone. He said I made him feel young again. He said he knew he couldn't offer me much, but he could offer me his whole heart. I said yes. I didn't cry, but it was close. We set the wedding for June 2024. Small ceremony, immediate family only. That's when I met Vanessa properly. She flew in from Toronto 2 weeks before the wedding, and I could feel her assessment the moment we shook hands at the airport. She was tall, polished, wearing what I recognized as a Loro Piana coat. She worked for RBC Capital Markets. She had her mother's eyes and her father's smile, but there was a hardness there that surprised me. The rehearsal dinner was at River Cafe. Colin had insisted on paying, and I'd let him, even though I knew it would strain his budget. Vanessa sat across from me, swirling her wine, and said, "So, Beatrice, Dad tells me you live in a condo downtown. Which building?" I named a building on 10th Avenue. I didn't mention that I owned the building. I lived in the penthouse, yes, but I'd told Colin it was a rental. The building had 18 units. Market value was approximately $4 million. My unit alone was worth $700,000. "Nice area," Vanessa said. "Expensive for a retiree, though. What did you say you did before retirement?" "Property management," I said. "For which company?" "Various landlords." I was independent. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Dad's lucky to have found someone so understanding. Not everyone would be comfortable with his financial situation. Colin looked uncomfortable. "Vanessa." "What?" I'm just saying Beatrice clearly isn't marrying you for your money, Dad. The gallery barely breaks even. I took a sip of water. I could have said many things. I could have told her that her father's gallery would have closed 6 months ago without my intervention. I could have told her that the building she was sitting in, River Cafe's location, I'd looked at buying it in 2019 but decided the flood risk was too high. I could have told her that her Loro Piana coat cost about the same as 1 month's revenue from my smallest property. Instead, I said, I love your father for who he is, not what he has. The wedding was beautiful, small, like we'd planned. Vanessa was civil but cold. My daughter, Claire, who is 44 and teaches environmental science at UBC, pulled me aside during the reception. Mom, does Colin know about the properties? No. Are you going to tell him? Eventually. When it feels right. And Vanessa? Especially not Vanessa. Claire knows me well enough not to push. She'd grown up watching me build the portfolio, watching me negotiate deals, watching me hold my ground in rooms full of men who underestimated me. She understood why I needed to be sure Colin loved me, not my assets. The first few months of marriage were lovely. We traveled to Vancouver Island in July. We went to the Edmonton Folk Music Festival in August. Colin introduced me to his friends as his wife with such pride it made my chest tight. In September, we hosted a dinner party at my condo, and I watched Vanessa's eyes scan the space, calculating. The penthouse had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, custom millwork, a kitchen that had cost more than Colin's annual income to renovate. This is quite a rental, Beatrice, she said, running her hand along the marble countertop. I've been here a long time. Rent control. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't press. In October, things shifted. Vanessa started calling more often. She'd ask Colin about finances, about his retirement savings, about the gallery. Then she started asking about me. Colin would laugh it off, but I could hear the strain. One evening in late October, Vanessa called while we were having dinner. Colin put her on speaker, and I heard her say, Dad, I've been thinking, have you and Beatrice discussed estate planning? I mean, you should have a will that protects you. Colin looked flustered. We haven't really talked about that. You should. I know a lawyer in Calgary who specializes in second marriages. You need to make sure your assets are protected. After the call, Colin was quiet. Finally, he said, I'm sorry about Vanessa. She's protective. It's natural, I said. She wants to make sure you're taken care of. I don't have much to protect, though. The gallery, the house, some savings, nothing compared to what Jennifer's family had. Jennifer was his first wife. I touched his hand. You have more than you think. In November, Vanessa flew back to Calgary. She suggested we all meet for lunch at Vendôme, a nice French restaurant downtown. Over duck confit, she started asking me questions, direct ones. Beatrice, you said you worked in property management. Did you ever own any properties yourself? I've owned a few over the years, I said carefully. How many? I'm not sure of the exact count currently. She leaned forward. Currently? So you still own properties? Colin looked between us, confused. Is this an interrogation? I'm just curious about our family's financial picture, Dad. It's important when you're talking about inheritance and estate planning. I set down my fork. Vanessa, I have my own financial advisor and my own estate plan. Your father and I keep our finances separate. Separate? So you have significant assets? I'm comfortable. How comfortable? Colin's face went red. That's enough, Vanessa. Beatrice's finances are her own business. But Vanessa had the bit between her teeth now. Over the next few weeks, she started digging. I could feel it. She asked Colin questions about where I'd worked, what companies I'd managed properties for. She asked if he'd ever been to my storage unit, if he knew what was in it. She asked if he'd seen my tax returns. Colin finally came to me in early December, distressed. Beatrice, Vanessa hired a private investigator. I went very still. She did what? She said she was worried about me. She said she wanted to make sure you were who you said you were. I told her it was inappropriate, but she'd already done it. He pulled out a folder. This is what she found. I opened it. Property records, corporation registrations, tax assessments. There, in black and white, was everything. The 17 properties, the numbered companies, the estimated net worth of $21 million. The fact that I owned Colin's gallery building. I looked at my husband. He looked stunned. "Is this true?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "All of it?" "Yes." "You own the building my gallery is in?" "Yes." "I bought it a month after we met. I reduced your rent because I wanted you to succeed, not because I wanted you to know it was me." Colin sat down heavily. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Why didn't you tell me?" And there it was. The question I'd been dreading. I took a breath. "Because I needed to know you loved me for me," I said. "Colin, I'm 68 years old. I've been wealthy for a long time, and I've watched how it changes things. People see the money first and the person second. When my husband Marcus died, I had 3 men approach me within 6 months. All of them very interested in my portfolio, very interested in helping me manage it. None of them interested in whether I was lonely or sad or needed someone to talk to about something other than cap rates." I looked at him. "You talked to me about art, about your wife, Jennifer, and how much you missed her, about your daughter and how proud you were of her even though you worried you'd failed her somehow. You talked to me like I was a person, not a bank account. And I fell in love with that. I fell in love with you." Colin's eyes were wet. "I would have loved you anyway. I know that now. But I needed to be sure." He reached for my hand. "I don't care about your money, Beatrice. I care about you." "I know. But Vanessa is going to care." "I know that too." The confrontation came 3 days later. Vanessa demanded a family meeting. She flew in again, this time with her husband, Brad, who worked in corporate law. They arrived at our condo on a Saturday morning, and I could see Vanessa's face when she walked in. Now she knew. Now she understood that this wasn't rent control, this was ownership. We sat in my living room. Claire had flown in from Vancouver, sitting beside me like a bodyguard. Colin was next to me, holding my hand. Vanessa and Brad sat across from us, and Vanessa had a leather portfolio in front of her. "I think we need to discuss the elephant in the room," Vanessa said. "Beatrice, you've been lying to my father about your financial situation." "I haven't lied. I've simply not disclosed everything. You told him you rented this condo. You own the building. I told him I lived here. He assumed it was a rental. I didn't correct him." "That's a lie of omission," Claire spoke up. "With respect, Vanessa, your father never asked my mother about her financial details. She doesn't owe you or anyone else a full accounting of her assets." Brad leaned forward. "Mrs. Chen, we're concerned about the appearance of financial impropriety. You've been in a position to manipulate my father-in-law's business situation without his knowledge." I looked at Brad. "I reduced his rent. How is that manipulation? You created a dependency. You made him think he was getting lucky when really you were controlling the situation. I was helping the man I love succeed in something he's passionate about." Vanessa's voice rose. "You're a gold digger. You saw a vulnerable widower and you pounced." Colin's hand tightened on mine. "Vanessa, that's enough." "No, Dad, it's not enough. She's been lying to you for over a year. She's been playing games. For all we know, she's going to take everything you have and leave you with nothing." I laughed. I couldn't help it, the absurdity of it. Vanessa glared at me. "Something funny?" "Vanessa," I said, still smiling, "what exactly do you think I'm going to take from your father? The gallery that loses money every month? The house in Altador that's worth maybe $600,000? His teacher's pension from the 20 years he taught high school art before opening the gallery? That's his legacy. That's what should come to me. And you think I want it? Why else would you marry him?" I stood up. I walked to my home office and came back with my own folder. I set it in front of Vanessa. "This is my estate plan," I said. "It was drawn up in 2019, after my husband Marcus died. It was updated in July of this year, after I married your father. Would you like to know what's in it?" Vanessa opened it. I watched her read, watched her face change. "Everything goes to Claire," she said slowly. "Every property. Every investment, every share in every numbered company. My daughter gets it all. Your father gets the penthouse to live in for the rest of his life, but ownership transfers to Claire upon my death." The gallery building transfers to Claire, but your father maintains his reduced rent for life. He gets security, comfort, and the ability to continue his work. He doesn't get assets he never asked for and doesn't need. Vanessa looked up. You're cutting him out. I'm protecting what I built. What my late husband and I built together. Claire grew up in this business. She watched me negotiate deals, manage tenants, navigate markets. She's the one who should inherit it. Your father has his own assets, which I assume will go to you as his daughter. We both protect our own children. That seems fair. Brad was reading over Vanessa's shoulder. There's a clause here. If Colin and Beatrice divorce within 5 years, all property rights revert immediately to Claire with no spousal support claims. That's right, I said. I'm not here for your father's money, and I've made damn sure he's not here for mine. The prenup we signed says the same thing. Colin spoke, his voice stronger now. There's a prenup? You signed it before the wedding, I said gently. You asked me if we needed one and I said it might be smart. You signed it without reading it carefully, which I told you not to do, but you insisted you trusted me. I did trust you. I do trust you. The prenup protects both of us. You keep everything you had before marriage. I keep everything I had before marriage. Anything we acquire together gets split evenly. Since we haven't acquired anything together, there's nothing to split. Vanessa was still staring at the papers. The gallery building is worth what? $3 million? Current assessed value is $2.8 million. Market value would be higher. And you just bought it. For what reason? Because the man I was falling in love with was about to lose his dream, and I had the power to prevent that without emasculating him by making it a gift or a loan. That's manipulation. That's love, Colin said. Everyone looked at him. He was looking at me, his eyes clear. She manipulated nothing. I chose to marry her because she made me laugh, because she listened to me talk about art for hours and never looked bored, because she fit into my life like she'd always been there. The money doesn't matter. Dad, the money always matters. Not to me. Not with her. He stood up. Vanessa, I appreciate that you're trying to protect me, but I'm a grown man. I've been handling my own affairs for 71 years. Beatrice has been nothing but honest with me about what matters. She lied about her assets. She maintained her privacy, which she had every right to do. I never asked her how much money she had. I never cared. I still don't care. What I care about is that she's proven, with legal documents, that she's not after anything that belongs to me or you. Vanessa looked like she'd been slapped. So you're choosing her over me. I'm choosing my wife, the same way I chose your mother 45 years ago, the same way you chose Brad. That's what marriage is. Vanessa stood abruptly, gathering the papers. This isn't over. But it was over. Brad looked embarrassed. He mumbled something about needing to catch a flight and practically dragged Vanessa toward the door. At the threshold, Vanessa turned back. I hope you're happy, she said to me. I am, I replied. I hope someday you can be happy for us too. She left. The door closed. Claire excused herself to make tea. Colin and I sat in silence for a moment. You really don't care? I asked quietly. About the money? No. About the fact that you didn't tell me? A little, but I understand why. He pulled me closer. Can I ask you something? Anything. That first night at the auction. Did you know who I was before you bid on the sculpture? No, I genuinely liked the sculpture. And the second time we had coffee? I genuinely liked you. When did you decide you wanted to marry me? I thought about it. The day you took me to the Gaslight Theater to see that experimental play that was absolutely terrible, and afterward, we laughed about it for 2 hours over cheap wine. You didn't pretend it was good to seem sophisticated. You just admitted it was awful and we bonded over that honesty. That's when I knew. Colin smiled. That play was truly terrible. The worst. But the company was perfect. Yes, it was. Over the next few months, things settled. Vanessa didn't call for a while. When she finally did, in February of 2025, her voice was stiff but not hostile. She asked about Colin's health, about the gallery, about whether we'd been traveling. She didn't ask about money. In March, she flew out for Colin's 72nd birthday. We had dinner at Teatro, and Vanessa brought a gift for both of us. A framed photo of the four of us from the wedding, Colin and me in the center, Vanessa and Claire on either side. "I thought you might like this," she said carefully. I looked at the photo, at my daughter's warm smile, at Vanessa's careful one, at Colin's joy. "It's lovely," I said. "Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a start. Now, at 68, nearly 69, I wake up every morning next to a man who makes me coffee exactly how I like it. We walk through Prince's Island Park most afternoons. We go to gallery openings, not just Colin's but others too. We travel, modestly but often. Colin knows about the properties now. He knows about the portfolio. He knows that I spend several hours each week reviewing reports from my property managers, that I conference call with my accountant quarterly, that I keep detailed spreadsheets of every unit's performance. He also knows that none of it matters more than the life we've built together. Sometimes people ask me why I kept the secret for so long. The answer is complicated. Part of it was protection, yes. I'd seen too many wealthy women become targets. I'd seen relationships warp under the weight of money. I'd seen children and stepchildren battle over estates before the bodies were even cold. But part of it was simpler than that. I wanted to be seen, really seen, not as a portfolio or a net worth or a potential inheritance, just as Beatrice, a woman who liked art and long walks and terrible experimental theater, a woman who was lonely and ready to love again. A woman who'd built something impressive, but knew that wasn't the most impressive thing about her. Colin saw that woman. He loved that woman. The money was irrelevant. And when the secret came out, when Vanessa forced it into the open, what mattered was that Colin's feelings didn't change. He was surprised, yes, a little hurt that I hadn't trusted him with the full truth earlier. But he wasn't suddenly more interested. He wasn't calculating what he could access or control. He just wanted to understand why I'd felt I needed to hide. That's how I knew I'd chosen right. To anyone reading this who's navigating late-life relationships, especially women with assets, I'd say this: your financial security is not selfish. Protecting what you've built is not unromantic. Maintaining separate finances is not a lack of trust. In fact, it's the opposite. When you remove money from the equation, you see clearly what's left. And if what's left is genuine affection, shared values, and mutual respect, then you have something worth far more than any property portfolio. I'd also say this: don't let other people's fears become your own. Vanessa was terrified I was going to take something from her father, and by extension, from her. That fear made her cruel. It made her investigate and accuse and attack. But her fear wasn't based on reality. It was based on assumptions and stereotypes about older women and money and second marriages. When you're honest, when you're clear about your intentions, when you document your wishes legally and transparently, you take away the power of those assumptions. You create clarity where there could be conflict. And finally, I'd say, trust your instincts. I knew from the beginning that Colin was genuine. I knew he wasn't performing interest or calculating angles. I knew because of how he talked about his late wife with continued affection, not bitterness. I knew because of how he worried about his daughter even when she was being difficult. I knew because of the way he treated waiters and gallery visitors and the guy who always asked for change outside the coffee shop. Character shows in the small moments. Pay attention to those moments. They'll tell you more than any financial disclosure ever could. Colin and I just celebrated our first anniversary. We had dinner at River Cafe again, full circle from that rehearsal dinner where Vanessa first showed her hand. The food was excellent. The company was better. And when Colin raised his glass to toast our first year together and many more to come, I didn't think about property values or market trends or estate planning. I just thought about how lucky I was to have found someone who made me laugh, who challenged me to see art differently, who fit into my life without trying to rearrange it. That's the real wealth. Everything else is just numbers and accounts.